cycle and the world's gone mad. Let's teach others the beauty of the land. My heart will be right as we come full circle. I'll give thanks for the miracles. North, south, east and west, I feel so blessed. I hope I'm moving on, walking on.
Hey everybody, Woody here. Welcome back to 1,000 Miles with Woody Blaine. And we're just gonna take a lot of time here to interview some elders and some people that are on this path, and try to get as many walkers to sign up here, and so the counter will go up. And so far there's about 10. But it's gonna take a little bit, but we know that people are on this path, and we got one of them sitting right here. I'm really excited to talk to him, and he's a kind of good friend of mine, and even we just met a couple years ago, but he's on this path. And so Ernie, why don't you introduce yourself real quick, man?
Well, I'm Ronnie Fitzpatrick, just a sojourner on this business called life.
Good word.
And I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and then I moved to Las Vegas, straight in the middle of Sodom and Gomorrah, and actually started a spiritual walk. Of all places, I started it there, and just been walking the path that my higher source has been leading me to, and he led me here. I love the title of the show. It's amazing because I was sitting here listening to it, and I'm thinking, yeah, 1,000 Miles with Woody Blaine. Yeah, and that's totally appropriate. And I'm really glad I get to walk like a few of those miles with you, man. The last couple of years have been really great. I've learned a lot being around you. The sweat that we did that one time was just, it's still profound, even to me to this day. And there's a lot of things that I remember hearing from you, and that I remember feeling and seeing, that still come back to me depending on what kind of situation's going on in my life. So it's like I'm really grateful for my higher power, because he's just put me in places and around people, and I'm sitting across the table from one of them that just have taken this journey to an even deeper layer and an even deeper layer. And it's like, my bank account may not look like it at times, but I just keep considering myself, the more I keep going on this path, I'm a pretty rich guy, I'm a pretty wealthy man, with the people the quality of people that I have around me, you being one, and Ron and a lot of other guys. So I'm really honored to be here, because I'm still a student, and there's still so much I haven't even scratched the surface on. I feel like I know enough, probably to be dangerous, but I know enough to not just get me by, but to not only keep elevating myself up, but take other people with me. That's been the best part of this whole journey. And I got to do that earlier today with someone, is, take a little bit of darkness that they were going through, and just like spray some light, on them, and just watch their spirits get lifted up. And then, and it just absolutely makes my day, where I go, okay, my day has seen a really good purpose, man. And
It's powerful watching that happen.
Yeah.
And
it never gets old.
Yeah, almost my whole life I've been using that phrase, 1,000 miles here and 1,000 miles there, and it's kind of like this. It works for my vision of this, because you can't really measure the past. So if we say 1,000 miles, that could equal a bunch of stuff. But I'm talking about like 1,000 miles back of knowledge, and because nothing's been reinvented. The wheel has not been reinvented. we're just restating old stuff. And so,
Universal truth.
yeah, so when it comes to spirituality, nobody's reinvented spirituality
Right.
in a couple of millennia. I mean, that's why I use 1,000 miles, because who knows how long. And so we use that knowledge from history, ancient history, however, whatever you want to call it, to move forward. Then that history could repeat itself, or you could have destructive history repeat itself. So my whole life has been, I don't want to repeat, especially parts of my life. No way. You know what I mean? And so I needed some other knowledge to repeat, to move forward.
What was interesting is when I was watching your first podcast, and you were talking about the first 15 months of your journey when you stopped substances. I was laughing because I was like, you got time off for good behavior, because I definitely spent like longer than 15 months struggling and just living in misery,
Yeah.
And I started that journey when I was 17 of just being abstinent from chemicals, and even that didn't start my spiritual journey, and I really didn't start it until I'd had little glimpses when I was little, and I know I've always had this spiritualness in me, a real powerful sense of it, but I never did anything with it because I was so busy focusing on what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do and how much money I was going to make and the prestige that I could build up for my name and everything else. It always drowned out any kind of spirituality that I started to get. So it wasn't until 2008 where I finally said, I've had enough. What I'm doing in this arena for being abstinent from alcohol and drugs is not enough for me, for my spirituality. I need to go somewhere else. And so I do have a main faith, but even then I thought there's got to be more. There's this whole universe that my God's made, and I want to find out how it works. Like, not to take advantage of it, but to work with it instead of working against it, because that's all I had been doing, was working against it, and I was going nowhere. So in 2008, I thought, I'm going to start looking at all these different religions and spiritual paths and see what's out there, and it's like I've been really blessed, because from 2008 to 2019, that's all I did.
I've heard you say this before about 10 years worth of just going on a journey to research, I guess we could
I call it my
it.
spiritual walkabout.
Yeah.
Like
Tell us
Crocodile
about that.
Dundee.
That's interesting to me.
Well, my marriage at the time was just in this sixth level of the Abuso of Hades, and I was about 238 pounds. And I'm like $175 now, right? And I was a heart attack waiting to happen, and I was morally bankrupt, spiritually bankrupt, emotionally bankrupt. I was completely miserable, and about the only light that I had in my life were my daughters, and so I said enough, and I started delving into ashrams and spiritual centers. There was a place in Vegas called the Ganesha Center. I started there, and I just started absorbing different religions from the East and native. I mean, you name it. I was going everywhere, right? It was awesome. And when I got divorced, I stayed in the cave for a few months, kind of healing from that. And then I just exploded, and I started going everywhere. And I just wanted to follow. That's why I call it a spiritual walkabout. Somebody suggested something for me to check out. I'd go check it out just to see what it was all about. And I started finding my mind more open to hearing things, not necessarily accepting everything, because sometimes for me it's garbage in, garbage out. There were things that I saw and that I heard that just would not resonate with me. It was like, no, thank you. That's great for you, but that's not floating my boat right now. And the more that I saw, and the more that I exposed myself to, and the more I started to understand this incredible creation called the universe, the more I started seeing, we were talking about it earlier, where you were talking about being in harmony with fire, like I wasn't working it. I first noticed all the places that I wasn't in harmony with it, and that's why the consequence was I was constantly getting burned, or even worse, I was burning other people, right? And then I started becoming more in harmony with that fire. I realized that fire's in me. Like, I'm that light. I'm that fire. So what am I doing with it? How am I tending to it? Am I neglecting it? How much? It's kind of like when you take a boat out from the dock. When you take a boat away out of the dock, you can't just gun it and then you go, because that wake is going to knock over all the boats and that are docked alongside you.
Sure, and the no wake zone, right?
Right, and it's like, that's kind of how I used to live my life. Just get in the boat, gun it, and let's go. And I'd never look at what the wake, what I was creating in the wake behind me. And so it was kind of like learning how to be responsible with this spirit that I have, because there is a responsibility that comes with it. What am I contributing? Because all I've been doing is taking, and giving back little bits at a time, but not giving with the same level that I've been taking. It wasn't until I started balancing that scale out that my vision went from like this to just, I could see. Now I can really see. And it's kind of ironic because in 2020, I had a massive heart attack in March. A month and a half after that, I lost the vision in my left eye. And then a month after that, I had 2 stones that were trying to fuse with my liver. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no guarantee I'm going to wake up tomorrow. Like now, there's really no guarantee I'm going to wake up tomorrow. So what kind of legacy am I going to leave behind now? This is something I remember a coach when I used to play sports a long, long time ago. He would always say, Ernie, it's not how you start the game. How are you going to finish the game? And the older that I get, the more I realize that spiritual walk that I took for 10 plus years was setting me up to learn how to finish the rest of my game here, so that when I do leave here, because for me, I firmly believe for me to be absent of my body is to be standing in front of my higher power. And how do I wanna approach that meeting? Like, what's the report I want to hear from my higher source here? I'd like to hear the words, well done, well done, my good and faithful servant.
Some kind of pay value, right?
It's, I mean, instead of just a watch, and maybe a toaster, it's just like, well done. You not look at. My whole life has been spent looking at all my mistakes, and that's not spirituality. That's just some kind of form of punishment, and all that did was just keep me repressed and keep me down and keep that light from shining. And the more I started hanging around people like you, and other spiritual seekers on their path, there's such a huge world out there. There's such a really beautiful world out there, even in the middle of all of the chaos and all the tragedy and all the drama. There's a lot of beauty out there, and I was completely blind to it 10 years ago. And now, even with a bad eye that I can't see out of, I can still see. Now I can see.
I really love your story. I mean, we get pieces and parts of it where we hang out, but I think a lot of people have this same experience, and some people, they're transformed.
Yeah.
And I just had to come to the conclusion I'm not the guy that ran across the burning bush and got blessed. You know what I mean? And but the way that it happened for you is you got into this thing that helped with drugs and alcohol or whatever all it was, and And it's a discovery that really wasn't my problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now that that's away, now I'm really got a problem.
Yeah,
and that's
'cause
why I talk about that 15 months, because I don't think I'd wish anybody, come and deal with your devices without help. Just don't just quit. That would be the worst. That's what I did. That was the worst thing I could have did, and I wasn't seeking help, or I didn't even know I needed help really. But you got in there and you tackled a thing that was ruining your life at a very young age. Matter of fact.
Yeah.
But then kind of hit a wall and said, what's the meaning and purpose of this? And so I'm going to call it you went 10 years for some research. Then
Yeah.
really that's what that is. And you started off by using that word spirituality, which I always ask everybody, give me a quick definition of spirituality, because there ain't a good one, not really. I mean, we use it here. We say spirituality is connection.
Right.
But then that's a large thing to say. You know what I mean? It's like connection to, well, it's literally everything, which means I still have to do some research for the rest of my life for every new thing that comes along. Like we were talking about a while ago, and I don't want to go down that road, but, the living in harmony and balance with how something is made up. And you could do it with everything: food, nature, animals, pets, relationships. And so a couple of people brought up to me like, well, how do you live in harmony with like politics? And it's like, we're not changing the spiritual rules here.
Right.
We either live in harmony with it and get the benefits, or you live out of harmony with it and you get automatic consequences. So, that quote in the book, I say our book, like I wrote it. I didn't write it. But anyway, it says, and I'm not a very good quoter, but it says there's a principle, which is a bar against all ignorance or whatever. And that principle is contempt prior to investigation. This is by Herbert Spencer. That used to blow me away. It's like I'm coming up with an opinion without even doing any research.
Right.
So how do I live in harmony with it? Well, kind of knowing enough to make a good decision. And then, I don't know, I don't like talking to people. That's a rabbit hole for me.
Right.
And it's like, hey, I think maybe taking it too serious. And
well, there's like
it's
three ways.
It's all one bird.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the bird is sick because both wings are sick. And
I think what helped me open up and understand what it is that you're talking about, the concept and the principle that you're talking about, being open, is there's three ways of listening to people or listening to anything. I can either agree with, I can disagree with, or I can be with. And when I'm agreeing with a person, so let's say, and I'll just throw a movie out there. Let's say we're talking about Star Wars, right? You've seen Star Wars, I've seen Star Wars, half the galaxy have seen Star Wars. And you can talk about the things that you enjoy about Star Wars. Now, if I'm agreeing with you, I will hear those things and I'll say, I agree with you, therefore, you're right because I'm right. I can disagree with you when I hear those things, and I can say, well, I disagree with you because you're wrong, because I'm right. Either way, I get to be right. And there is no way I will ever be in a state of mind to be open enough to hear anything. If I'm being with someone, if I'm being with you, and you're talking to me about your experience with Star Wars, I'm coming from a place of I don't know. And those other two places that I'm coming from, agreeing and disagreeing with, I'm coming from the place of not only do I get to be right, but the main one is I know. I already know. I already know that movie. I already know what you're going to talk about. I already know. So I'm either going to agree with you or I'm going to disagree with you. But if I'm being with you, I can come from a place of, you know what, I'm going to act like I don't know. I'm going to act like I don't really know that movie. And so I'm going to hear possibly a fresh perspective from somebody on something that I may have already experienced. And I may hear an experience from you or for someone else because it was different for them that I didn't realize. And I can sit back and go, wow, I can totally see that. Okay. And that's really what took me from having the horse blinders on to just having them taken off, where I can look around and go, man, there really is a big world out here. And it's not just because of the space of the world. It is big. And the way I liken it is this. Anybody that comes to me and says that they know God, I'll laugh at them, because how can I understand an infinite being, an infinite source with a finite mind? This body, my spirit's infinite, yeah, but my body's not. And so my spirit's trapped by this carcass that's going to eventually die, and it almost died on me 2 years ago, and so how can I understand this infinite source with a finite mind? That's the ultimate, to me, that's the ultimate in ego. So for me, the fun part is to realize this whole vastness of how this higher source is created, this universe and these principles, these universal truths. Like, there is an infinite way of all of this, and I'm just looking at this like tiny little viewpoint, this tiny little perspective. And even though I'm never going to be able to understand or grasp or see the infinite like this higher source can, I can definitely at least see more than just one way of how to do something or how to be something, because we're not human doings. We're human beings. And I know this should be a word. It's not a word. You won't find it in Webster's. But I believe in beingness. How is my beingness? Am I open? Am I forgiving? Am I being empathetic and compassionate? How am I being? We're not human doings. I'm not doing forgiveness. I'm not doing love. I'm being love. That was another big earth shatterer for me. And
it's more of an adjective than a noun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really where the last 10 years was spent.
So I like the way you just explained that, because it kind of throws out this, maybe it's ego-centered pursuit of being right or wrong. But if I can only learn this much about each thing in life, then what makes me think I'm right? You know what I mean? So, and being right, doesn't that just slam the door shut on learning something new?
Absolutely.
So I have a very respected elder in my mind that helped me through this life of recovery early on, and he used to say that when you become an elder, you take on it's a principle of being 95% student and 5% teacher, and that kind of blew me away, because it was like, well, wait a minute, I want to hear all the elders' wisdom, right. You know what I mean, and like a sponge, suck it all up, and it's like they'll mostly just sit there and take in what you're saying, and I feel insignificant. You know what I mean? And but when you ask the right questions, I think sometimes, and you give them time, that they'll take that opportunity to be a teacher.
Right.
But then also there's a concept that the same elder would say, a teacher isn't something it isn't a person that teaches you information you don't already know. A good teacher extracts from you what you already know that you kind of blocked out. And I was like, well, okay, you're confusing the hell out of me. You know what I mean? What do I get here? So, but I mean, over time, and so I kind of took to that. You spent 10 years. Oh, let's ask you this. So, do you think that there's a way to just teach somebody on Monday to get to this place of being able to be a student of God and spirituality and this walk by Friday at 3 o'clock? I don't
No.
think so. 'Cause for most of the people that I know, it has taken research and making mistakes. And like when you talk about walking a spiritual road, it's actually a big wide road. It's not a tight rope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you really get plenty of room. And like this elder told me, and I've said this before, but this elder told me it's a big wide road, and what makes a spiritual person is someone who gets knocked down or gets off the road every day, but gets back up and gets back on the road and continues. That's a spiritual person. And I was struggling, after trying to change my life for about 6 or 7 years.
You were spiritual.
So far. All of a sudden it was like, well, that's what I've been doing for a long time. But
Right.
I didn't feel that way.
Right.
I didn't. I was still telling myself I'm missing what they're talking about. And I really kind of wasn't. I just didn't understand the spiritual law part of it,
Right.
And so, yeah, because things are going to happen. Well, I mean, I can't find a program that fixes you for me, or the way the world operates. I have no idea how to fix the guy in front of me that sits through a green light so I can't go, and you know what I mean?
Right.
I can't fix that guy.
Right.
Or that situation, that moment in time.
Well, you said something really interesting, and it reminded me of a story I learned a long time ago. It was a gentleman named Bruce. He was from Hawaii. Amazing spiritual man. He recently passed away. It was a really big loss for this world because he was an amazing man, a very powerful man, and a really beautiful man. But he was. I was doing this seminar with this company in Cali, and there was a program there called PLD, Pacesetter Leadership Dynamics, and it was a 90-day program where you get this personal coach and you're on a team and you come up with 90 days to do different goals in your personal, emotional, financial, and areas of life.
6 life areas.
Yeah. And you get this coach, right? And you're working, and then you also work on team goals for the 90 days. And Bruce was the gentleman that wrote the program, and we lost the PLD coordinator at that place, and he decided to teach us our class. So we're getting it kind of straight from the source. So that was kind of cool. And I remember that during the 90 days that I was doing it, the first month, I staffed what they had, what was called the basic seminar. It was a 4-day seminar where they taught basic universal truths, and you did physical exercises to kind of reinforce what you were learning, which I thought was amazing. And then the second month rolled around, and I staffed that one as well. And then the third month rolled around, I staffed that one as well. Now, the class that we were in, we had to go one more extra month before we graduated from this program with another team. And I was going to staff that one as well. And so I had my name up on the board, and I was ready to go, and I wanted to help out and volunteer and help teach some people some of the things that I learned, and I was all gung-ho. And I came into the office one day, and my name's off the board. And I went, why is my name off the board? And Bruce was standing there. And he said, yeah, I know it's off the board. I took it off the board. And I asked him why. And he looked at me and he said, I've watched you around here. I know your heart. Like, I know where your heart's coming from. He didn't say he knew my heart. But I know where your heart's coming from. And I know you want to help and you want to be of service. But I don't want you hiding here. I want you to go out there in the world. And I want you to succeed. And I want to see you fall on your face. I want to see you make mistakes, because that's how you're going to learn what it is that you've been learning here. Because one of the things that I really liked about him and a lot of the facilitators is, as much as I wanted to thank them for what it was that they presented to me, they would always tell me, I didn't do anything. I just facilitated this. You're the one that drew it out of yourself. It was like the last 10 years of that I spent in the spiritual walk was me taking all of those things that I already was drawing out of me and learning how to practically apply them in my life. And there were a lot of moments where I was successful at them, and there were a lot of moments where I wasn't successful at them. As you know, hence, like, I got a divorce in 2010. I'm finishing up another divorce that I had no business in, being in a marriage that I had no business getting into. It's like I'm still learning. Even a year and a half ago, I made the same mistake that I did back in 2010. It's like I'm still learning, and that's what I love about being a student. Is like life. What I've learned so far is life is going to constantly present opportunities for me to to humble myself by making a choice that isn't serving me. And so one of the things that I learned that I still apply as much as I can today is there is no such thing as good, bad, right, or wrong. I hear that a lot in some of the places that I go to, because I went back to the place that I started, where I stopped using drugs and alcohol. I went back to that organization, and I hear that a lot: good, bad, right, or wrong. Good, bad, right, or wrong. And it's like I've learned that there is no such thing as that. There are either things that I'm going to choose that serve me, or they're not going to serve me. One of the two. And it's not good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just, what is it that I say I want in my life? The people that I have surrounding me, the kind of work that I do, the kind of life that I'm living. I'm going to make choices in my life that are going to serve that. And then I'm going to make choices in my life that I don't serve from that. If all I do, when I make choices that don't serve me, if all I'm going to do is berate myself and belittle myself and criticize myself for those choices, I'm never going to learn the lesson I have to learn here. So that when it comes around again, and it will come around again, like that opportunity that I made the mistake in, it'll come around again. And when I make that choice that serves me, then my higher power looks at me and goes, all right, kiddo, you learned your lesson.
And don't you think that's more damaging than other people berating me? And
yeah,
you know what I mean? Me doing it to myself is more damaging than
absolutely
hearing it from outside, and that's crazy.
Yeah.
But I think, if we were trying to define spirituality, the whole last 20 minutes was, barely touching the idea of what is it? It's first I got to find those principles, and then I got to figure out how to break old habits and get in the habit of living by new principles. And then how many are there? I mean, this is a lifetime journey, and I just often think of, because a lot of things just don't bother me no more,
Right.
But life is still going on out there, and there's all kinds of stuff, and political, and the earth is on a wobble.
Yeah.
And like the Peruvian elders told us that's part of the prophecy that's going to happen, and it's happened before, over the last, I don't know, 1,000 years,
millennia
back.
Yeah.
And so those are inevitable things, and there was a time where I used a lot of my energy thinking and contemplating and creating fear, even, and then walk around and try to live in this fear that something might happen, and things like that. And when I started to make an effort, and it's mostly cognitive at first, and then your feelings kind of begin to follow that, I began to relax a little bit more about, okay, so it might happen, and there's a saying in Indian country that we say, we're on Indian time, right?
Indian
well,
time.
It's a big joke, because if you're late
Indian
to something,
time.
you go, oh, I'm on Indian time, but there's some elders that say that's not what Indian time means there, Chief, and what does it mean? Indian time means if I pass away right now, I have everything is set up for me to leave. That's living on Indian time.
All right, I like that.
But
I'm on Indian time then.
Yeah, so if I use that
like
phrase,
that.
Indian time, to be late for dinner and there ain't no food left, it's a tough luck. That was a spiritual law that you didn't live in harmony with.
Right.
So it's like, Oh man, I've been saying that since I was a kid. My grandpa used to say that. Yeah, we're on Indian time, to my grandma, and my grandma would say, "Well, I put it all away." And supper time was not on Indian
Yeah, but
time; it was on food time. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of little things like that,
I've
and
learned a lot from when we mentioned Indian time, and I've learned a lot from my family because my family's from Mexico, and part of my heritage is Yaqui Indian. When I remember we were talking about this before we started the podcast. When I was 11 years old, I had a really profound experience. In elementary school, they took two kids from two grades from each school in a surrounding area, and we went on this field trip, and so I got to see Mesa Verde, and it was really interesting because when we were walking the path to get there, and I remember it. I still remember it to this day because it had just rained and the ground was really kind of muddy, and I remember walking it and thinking to myself, like, this is like I had been there before, like it was familiar to me. People were looking around and everything else, and I remember catching myself even that little going, like I already know. Like I already know what I'm
yeah,
gonna see. And it was really weird. So when we got there to the face of the cliffs, I remember feeling a lot of tingling in my body. It was really kind of weird. I didn't understand it then because I was little. I really didn't understand a lot of spiritual
what'd you say?
concepts.
11? You were
Yeah,
11?
I was 11, but it was really I took it as being kind of eerie because I didn't know what the feeling was. I look back now and I have an idea what that probably was, but and now for me it is really profound. So I did
Could say spiritual experience
it was
without
definitely,
having the
yeah,
words for that.
right.
Yeah.
And for me, like spirituality is, being connected is one thing. I know for my spirituality, there has to be a level of faith in my higher power, in my God. And for me, like I stopped becoming a religious person about my faith, and I started becoming a man of faith or a man of God. And that meant for me, a religious person is someone who thinks that they can do things in order to gain this higher power's grace, or favor, more specifically. And what I learned is a man of God of any form of spiritual walk understands that there's nothing that they can do to gain the favor of this supreme being, this almighty being that created mountains and created these oceans and created this whole universe. There's nothing that I could do to gain that favor. So that keeps my level of humility, you know, pretty grounded. Because all I have to do is go to a mountain or see an eagle fly, and go, I didn't create that. My God did. Like, what a big God. Like, that's amazing. I'm just this little, you know, speck of sand on the beach. That's all I am compared to this God. Like, that's pretty humbling. It's and my friend Ron always says this. I can't, he can, so I think I'll let him. And I love that. I love that saying because that's another way to keep me humble, and it doesn't keep me down or oppressed. It keeps me grounded with my God to learn more. And that's really what I used to ask my God a lot in the last 10 years. Like, show me who you are. I want to know who you are. Just show me. And my God always did. Always did. My God was always that faithful to show me who he was, and he'd bring himself to me in the form of people or places or things that I could look at and go, my God's fingerprints are all over that. And now I sit here with you and in front of anybody, and I know that my God's fingerprints are all over here, and they're over here, and they're over here. So for me, spirituality is aligning this with first my gut first. Like, men have a gut, right? Women have intuition, right? It's like to align my gut, and then my heart, and then my head follows, because this is the slave. That's what I learned, is that, like, this is the slave, and when I have this lined up first here, and then here, I become that vessel that my God wants me to be. I become what He has always planned and wanted me to be for my God's greater good, for His purpose. And I become my own purpose. I become that greater purpose for myself. My life becomes more enriching. I mean, it's like such a domino effect. And I know that now. And the funny thing is I knew that back then. Like, that answer was always in me. And I believe that answer is in everybody. And we live in a world where everything has to happen now. Okay, you want dinner now? Let's just throw it in the microwave. Bing, done. Fries are done. Here we go. We want love instantly and gratifying. We want our career instantly and gratifying. We want to talk to somebody instantly and be, everything is just such a microwave button away. And spirituality is just not that. It's like you said, it's 1,000 miles. 1,000 miles have already been walked, and there's going to be 1,000 miles left to walk, right? It's a journey, and I've learned now to just really enjoy the journey, because it's a beautiful journey with beautiful people in it, and beautiful things to see, and it's taken all of these years to finally get to a point where I'm like, I could really care less when I get to point B. I really don't, because I really love the in between of point A to point B, because I already know when I get to point B, that's a new point A. And I'm going to create a new point B. Big deal. What's happening in between, man? That's life. That's spirituality. That's the whole fun part, man. I love that now. I'm in love with it now. And so now I'm finally in love with my life. And I don't have a woman anywhere remotely close to being on the radar. And that's a first for me, too. So
You're not in charge of that either.
You're right. Oh yeah, definitely. Even if I am with a woman, I'm still not in charge anyway.
Yeah.
I've learned that the hard way.
Well, that's the spiritual law, principles, laws, and values of a woman.
Right.
And if you live in harmony with it, I mean,
you don't get burned.
But if you don't live in harmony with it, you got problems.
Yeah, you sleep on the couch.
I really like that word, acquired. So this happened to me with the steps. So this man, he said, we can't just admit that we're powerless and unmanageable. You have to acquire that understanding that you're powerless and unmanageable. And so, like, the first time I tried doing that, I did it mechanically, and I had this much information that I could admit to, right?
Right.
And then it took a little bit of time, but eventually, like, there was an acquirement that is a hot flame, and I can't even get near it. You know what I mean? Not that I was cursed or anything like that. It's the principles, laws, and values of that I lived out of harmony with it so far. So I really love how you put it, because you acquired this knowing. You call it faith, but it's still from a knowing.
Yeah.
And so you acquired it, and it kind of is not taught to you. People people give information, but I still have to jumble it up, mold it up, and have a knowing about it. But then I take the knowing and I gotta apply it. You know what I mean? So I get to point B and it becomes point A, and so that's I mean, when you begin to realize that, and I'll just speak for myself. When I begin to realize that, I begin to realize that I have a long ways to go, and and it's a 1,000-mile journey, and I'm not going to just learn the next thing and so that was all kind of difficult for me. It's like, when I talk about principles, laws, and values, and this was all taught to me. This isn't me, but like the fire is the easy way to put it. Yeah. But literally, you can do it with everything. But if the fire has this power of principles, laws, and values, and if you live in harmony with it, it has benefits, And if you live harmony with it, it has consequences. Like there's no deity sitting out here ready to punish you. And so that gave me the concept of I don't have a punishing God, right?
Right.
But also made me think, but wait a minute, that is the elements of God. The God's in the fire. God's in the trees. God's in our food. God's in everything. And if we live in harmony with it, we get the benefits of whatever that is. Power greater than ourselves.
Right.
And if we live out of harmony with it, it's already set up. It's like there's not just some mean God saying, I need to punish you for that.
Right.
And it's already set up. So I think different cultures, might be able to put it that way, just have this a way to understand. So like from earlier when you were talking, if there's 10 pieces of information that explain something, and I have 3, and I think I'm right, and someone else comes along and presents me with 2 ones that aren't part of the 3 I know,
Yeah.
then there's an argument, and you're right, or I'm right, and you're wrong. And instead, it's such 2 people that have 5 pieces of information, and together we still don't have all the information.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. That's perfectly put.
And so,
right.
how do we continue to work for that? So that kind of explains you A to B, and then B turns into A, and I got another B to head to. I like how you put that, because who the heck are we to know everything? You know,
Right.
the glimpses of truth. I think you might have to help me out with this, but because I'm not very religious. I've gotten on this spiritual path, and I understand what religion is about and its purpose and things like that. But I think it's in this old man pointed this out to me. It's in Deuteronomy.
Oh, Deuteronomy. Yeah.
Deuteronomy,
Yeah.
and it's 29 or something like that. I probably have that wrong. Don't quote me. But there's a passage right there that says, I ain't quoting this, right? But the gist of it is, what should be revealed to you, you will have access to you. You know what I mean? And what's not going to be revealed, you will never be able to find out what it is.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm supposed to use what is right in front of me, not worry too much about the makings of it, or the secret code,
Right.
whatever the heck that is. You know what I mean?
And there was the you know, if there was ever a bugaloo in my life that always threw like a wrench in the engine, it was that right there. And what that is, you know, God giving me, my God giving me the answers to a situation in life, like an outcome or an answer. You know, yes is always the favorable one, right? Like, okay, I'm going to grant this to you, kiddo. You know, that's always the fun part. Thanks, God. You know, it's like, thanks, Dad. And then the other one was no, which I you know, no one ever likes to be told no. No child ever likes to be, you know, told no. You can't have that.
They wrote a song about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Stones did too. Yeah, right.
Yes is the saddest thing.
Yeah. No, that can be gotten over. You know, I can get over a no, you know, in a little bit of time. Now it takes less time. You know, I may kind of be bummed out about it and be like, oh, I didn't get what I wanted. 10 minutes later, I'm like, you know, ooh, shiny thing, next. Right on, cool. Yeah. And then there's the third one, which I really hate to this day. It's like I still struggle with this one, and that's wait. Like, I'm not giving you the answer right now. You're going to have to be patient, or you get to be patient now. And I'm going to watch what you do, you know, and that's giving me probably the best opportunity to learn patience and to learn how to be more in relationship with my God, where I would sit back and be still and be like, okay, I'm not going to force this. I'm not going to shove this. I'm not going to shove my will down God's, you know, throat, because that's never going to work. I'm going to wait for God to reveal what it is my God wants for me. And that was always the hardest part of this journey for me. And it's only been until maybe the last couple years where I've finally been able to be at peace with that and live in harmony with that for it. And that's probably one of the main reasons why I'm in love with my life now for the last year and a half plus. Things aren't really high. They're not really low. They're just right in that pocket. I've always been wanting to get there, and I've had little glimpses of it before in my life, but never for this long, consecutively. Maybe a month, maybe 3 months, maybe even 6 months. But then I'd shove something down, the throat, and I'd end up, in a world of hurt again, on my knees going, oh God, can you help get me out of this situation?
Sure.
Can you...
Like God would have to influence the people that have you.
Right.
I always did that for jail. Oh, please, God, get me out of jail.
Right.
But then you think about that, God would have to touch the jailer's heart to let me out because they don't have real control over it.
Right.
But yeah, so it's kind of tough. We used to. Well, I've been up to like northern Maine and northern New York to help out some communities there, and they presented a concept and my elder, I'm always talking about, he had been there before and he'd told me about this too, but when they pray, they don't ask for nothing. They only give thanks. And it's like, I didn't understand. I thought praying was, I need this and I need that, you know what I mean?
Help me get out of this foxhole.
And their belief is, your needs are going to get met because you're pulsing out in almost like a sonar your needs. And if you sit with that, then the things that fulfill those needs come along. It doesn't often match the picture of how I think the need should be met, but
Right.
The basic need can be met. So, and I've heard this before, like trees have a sonar. They're constantly pulsing out. So, they're sending out a signal, and
Right.
somehow that signal turns into a little rainstorm or something that they might need some water or something like that. But
Wow.
and then when the earth is out of balance, sometimes it takes longer than the time frame that they need it. So we lose forests of trees because they didn't get no water for 10 years and things like that. So it kind of has to evolve around the workings of this life-sustaining system that we're in. And it's not just the earth. You were talking about a while ago, it's the moon, it's the universe, and it's the rotation around the sun and the sun's pulse and all that kind of stuff. So it's constantly trying to live in harmony and balance, but it's not always that way. And so how does that translate with what you just said? Whenever I need something, I have a different idea of how that need can be met. It's like the right woman hasn't come along. Well, maybe you haven't been the right receiver yet. Maybe this
I wasn't right here.
Yeah,
because
maybe
I
this
wasn't
time
right.
you're getting right now
Yeah.
is learning how to be Ernie. And I see that too. And, it's your life is fascinating because I've heard pieces and parts of it, and I don't think he even said it, but I think he got sober around 17 or 18 years old.
Yeah.
And that was like
37
years ago.
37 years ago.
And
yeah.
that's always amazing to hear, like in some of the rooms that we go to. But it's like then to understand that even that walk that saved my life became complacent, and there needed to be more. And it's a good message, because no matter how good it is right now, I shouldn't get complacent with it. I should continue to try to learn and grow some more. And I think that's what we mean by 1,000-mile journey, and we need the old information.
Yeah.
And it's because it's simple. You know what I mean?
It works.
It's
right.
And if we don't keep it simple, stupid. We could then bastardize spiritual.
And you see it all over the place. You see it. You see people peddling it and marketing it
Yeah.
all the time. And I hear it. I hear it in, some of the meetings that I go to, and just in the world in general. And that's when I notice this, and my heart goes out to these to people that I see pursue it this way. And that's, like I was talking about it earlier. They want that instant gratification. They want that now. It's like they want to read something or hear something or take a seminar or go somewhere and get that spirituality now, right? Like you said, find that burning bush, and then and now they're going to walk on water and possibly even create the lake that they can walk across. And I look at that and I go, I love the name of this, because there's been 1,000 miles already walked.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those things, it took that length to get to where we're at now, and there was a lot of learning and a lot of falling and a lot of trial and tribulation and a lot of going, okay, I'm not going to do that again, right? And there's still that walk left to go, but it's a journey. It's not going to happen in a seminar, and it's not going to happen in the length of reading a book. It has to be drawn out from deep within, and some of those things that are deep within take a while to go in. And it's kind of funny, because I heard this really great story from a really wise old guy, and it was the story of God talking to these angels, and God said to these angels, he said, I want your suggestion. I want to be close to my creation. I want to be close to man and woman, but I don't want them to see me. I don't want them to be able to just access me. I want to hide. I kind of want to be around them. Where do you think I should go? Where do you think I should hide? And one angel said, well, why don't you go hang out on one of the highest mountains on the planet? He said, no, eventually man's going to climb to that peak and he'll find me there. And then one angel said, well, why don't you just sit at the bottom of the deepest ocean, that you just created? They're not going to find you down there. And he said, no, eventually man's going to be smart enough, because I know them already. They're going to come up with a device. And
Curiosity.
Yeah, they're going to find me down there too. And then finally, God looked at the rest of the angels and he said, you know what, I got it. I'm going to hide inside of man, because inside there, that's the last place man's going to look to find me.
I've heard that before, and how true is it? I mean, that's the last place I look.
Yeah, right. All of us. Because we want to find it in the relationship, want to find it in the career, want to find it in this, I did that. I'm definitely not putting out the finger of judgment. I did that for years. And the only thing that I have to show for it are 3 beautiful daughters. And I guess the level of spirituality that I have now is even with all the mistakes and all the pain that I've put myself through by choice, my own choices, all the anguish that I put myself through, all of that stuff. I've arrived at a place, spirituality, where I can look at that journey and look at my daughters and think, I wouldn't change one drop. I wouldn't change one direction. I wouldn't change this road that I've been on 1 degree or even a half a degree, even if my God came down on a flaming pie and said, I'm going to let you go back 30 years and alter this just a slight. I wouldn't even do that now. I wouldn't have the little girls that I have now. I wouldn't have the friends like you in my life now. I wouldn't be sitting here in love with my life right now, walking the 1,000 miles that I've already walked in my own life and going, man, this is beautiful.
So let me just ask you one more question here. You said a bunch of powerful stuff. I mean, I'm learning stuff from you, and that's kind of why I'm doing this. I know, I know for a fact that I can't sit on what I already know. I've been blessed, man. I know a ton of elders. I've had a couple of them that are really close to me. One I was really close to for 20 years, and I love him to death. He's he was a father figure He was an elder. He was a boss. You know what I mean? He had all these different hats that we had to keep changing every day, but or several times a day, and things like that. But I mean that wisdom. In Alaska, like when you go there and you talk to tribal members, and when you're all done, they hold a ceremony and repeat back to you what they got out of it. Wow. And they call it not letting your words hit the ground, right? And so blessed to have had all this information given to me, and I kind of feel like it's my responsibility to not let all their words hit the ground, and because they're not going to be with us, you know. And this statistic's kind of old, 10 years old or so, but 10 years ago the statistic was we were losing 1,200 people a day from the World War II era. That's worldwide. That's everybody. And that means a lot of our elders that have this knowledge are leaving. And you know, there was a long time here from the late 1800s to the 70s or so where that was kind of shut down. Yeah. And they were scared to talk, and they were scared to teach you stuff because of the they could get caught up in the federal government, and people got killed, people got jailed, and for just trying to have a ceremony, you know. And so some of our old people that are with us today that experienced all that, they're hesitant. So when they do tell you something, I think it kind of means they're trying to get it out before they go. And so is it going to die with our generation? Not if I can help it. And but I'm nobody, you know what I mean? So how many people are not going to let this die? And that's what this podcast is all about. We can't let this stuff die. And I don't know everything, so we're going to get information from people like you. And you know, to me, you're an elder. You're an elder in the rooms that we go to. 37 years. I mean, most people don't make it that long in recovery, and you know, but not just that. It's the experience of the pursuit of living by a higher power, or a power greater than ourselves. And you know, I think that's a rare caption for people to get that understanding. Have you ever watched that movie, The Razor's Edge?
Yeah.
With Bill Murray?
Yeah.
I love that movie. The whole movie's about him trying to find the perfect answer and all this, and at the very end of the movie, he ends up in Tibet on one of those high mountains, and that monk tells him, yeah, it's been inside of you this whole time. You know what I mean? He's like, right. I could add a V8 or whatever.
Yeah, and I'm still doing that. I'm still doing that on a daily basis, where I'll smack my forehead and be like, wow. Like, I mean, on a sidebar here, like I was having a conversation with my healer who was in Las Vegas, and I was kind of having a moment on the phone where I'm just like raising my voice and I'm frustrated. And one thing I loved about my healer was she always gave me the space to do that, because she never took it personal. She knew it wasn't about her. It was about me. I was having the moment. It had nothing to do with her. And I'm screaming at her on the phone with her going, I've never cheated in a relationship. I've never been unfaithful. And I'm I keep attracting women that cheat on me. And you know, and I believe in that principle, or that universal truth, that I attract what it is that I am, right? Like, you know, what I'm attracting is only reflecting back, you know, from what I am. And after I get done yelling on the phone, being frustrated, all I heard was the first words out of her mouth were, "Okay, are you finished?" And I knew, like, the next thing coming out of her mouth was going to hit me right between the eyes. And she says, "Ernie, you cheat on yourself. You've cheated on yourself, and you've sold yourself short almost your entire life, because you have no idea what your worth is." And so why wouldn't you expect to attract a woman that cheats on you? You cheat on yourself. And instead of being, dogging me, and instead of being angry at me and frustrated and down, I had that V8 moment. And I went, oh my gosh, like, it's that easy, really? Like, I got it. And I went, all I have to do is stop doing that. And I stopped attracting people that cheat on me. Wow, what a concept. And that answer was always in me. And then the next portion of that conversation was, why did I spend so many years, wallowing in that? And it's like, okay, let's get rid of that. I'm here now. I'm here now with that revelation. What am I going to do with it from this moment on forward? It's just all these little new point B's that became new point A's. It's like, let's celebrate those things. That's what I love about life now, is I get to celebrate getting to a point B, not because I've gotten to a destination, but because now I've gotten to a new point. Okay, it's like, okay, God, what's next now? What do you got next for me? This is going to be really cool, because I don't have to go through painful lessons anymore. I'm not making those choices anymore. I'm in alignment with myself. I'm in alignment with my God, mostly. Most importantly, really. So, yeah, I'm going to naturally line up with myself because I'm lined up with my God. Okay, great. What do you have next for me, God? This is now I'm actually able to enjoy life because of that. And it's what I always say to my sponsees and what I've taught to my kids. It's not how you start the game. I coached basketball for 25 years. I used to teach every single one of my teams. We got into halftime and we were getting murdered out there. It was just like, hey guys, it's not how you start this game. How are you going to finish it, man? And it doesn't matter what that scoreboard reflects. If we end up on the short end of the score, how are you going to finish this game? Are you going to be able to walk off that court with your head held up high because you left everything out on that court? Or are you going to walk in shame because you still have some left in the tank? How are you going to finish this game? And that's, since I had my heart attack, that's been my journey since then, is how am I going to finish this game, man?
Powerful. That's a good coach.
I learned that from other great coaches.
And then when the game's over, guess what? There's another game next week.
Yeah.
We got to get prepared for.
Right. So what now? What next?
Yeah, that's life.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been a powerful talk with you, man. I'm hoping you'll come back, when we get down the road some and
absolutely
do an upgrade. But what I'd like to ask you is, I'm making a big guess here, but I kind of look at our viewers, the people that are tuning into this from all walks of life, and our topic is, walking the spiritual walk, and so just kind of see if you can give this audience a message. We have people people are just tuning in that go, well, what do they mean? I don't know nothing about spirituality, and some that are on this path and very knowledgeable and all of that. And so we're constantly asking, if you want to be on the show, send us a comment there and we'll try to get a hold of you. And we'd love to just keep moving around the world even, and on different perspectives, because out of them 10 pieces of information, I only feel like I have a half of one.
Right.
And there's a lot out there. Well, what would you say to a big group of people? What kind of message would you leave them with about spirituality?
1 + 1 = 3. And that's something that I learned 25 years ago now. That one person and another person, you look at that and you go, how can 1 + 1 = 3? It's supposed to equal 2. Well, the results that one person combined with another person, those two can create a sum greater than what they could create by themselves, hence the 3. So you and I, left up to our own devices, we'll just create a sum that just you can create by yourself or me. But together, we can create that three. We can create that sum greater than what we could do just individually. And it doesn't matter if you're a born-again Christian or a Catholic or a Lutheran or a Methodist or a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Muslim or an Indian or anything. If there's
an atheist,
agnostic. Atheists and agnostics. There are just some universal truths that are out there, and they're universal for a reason. They don't know any skin color or socioeconomic background or anything, faith or religion. It's just a universal truth. And pursuing that and raising consciousness and learning to celebrate our differences instead of pointing them out all the time and criticizing them or looking at them and going, well, I'd never do that. Well, so what? Let's celebrate them. It's just like I always told my daughters, when it comes to, being with your future partners, don't look at the differences and categorize them and focus on them. Celebrate what the differences are, because that's what makes them so unique. If I get to work with someone that has a different faith than me or a different viewpoint on spirituality than I do, I want to listen and I want to feel what those differences are, so I can work with that person however I can, however they would like me to or however I would like them to. And together we can create something larger than what we could do just by ourselves. And it doesn't matter what God they worship or what God I worship. I'm pretty sure that if we can collectively come up with something that benefits mankind, their God would be pretty happy with them, and my God will be pretty happy with me. And at the end of the day, I'll put my head down on a pretty comfortable pillow, which is a really nice, clear conscience, and I like that. That's a good day. That's a good life. No judgment. Just how can I be? How can I be with you? Not what can I do? How can I be with you? And how many other people can we take along for the ride? Let's raise this up. Let's leave this situation better for our presence than if we were never around at all.
Awesome. Powerful. I know some native elders that would say this information doesn't belong to us. You know what I mean? Don't say Indian religion or, you know what I mean? Because these concepts are the natural law.
Right.
And it doesn't matter who you are. They apply to you. The fire doesn't care how rich or poor you are, or what religion you are, or what color you are. And they say, there isn't several races. There's only one. It's the human race. And somehow we've gotten in this habit of dividing us up by, the different cultures. Yep. But they're not from a different race. And that we're all interconnected. We're all related. And that used to kind of blow me away in that, because when it came time to heal, I didn't know what I was healing from. And so that program that we both have went through, all that did was pull it up and set it on the table, and I still needed to heal from it.
Right, right.
And that's why that book, it tells us we have to have a power of our own understanding to help us with that part, and that's outside of those rooms.
Yeah.
And so you're lucky if you can find that and then integrate it into there. But I'll just briefly, part of what they told me was there's a saying in Indian country and maybe in other cultures, but that we have all of our ancestors within, and it's called DNA, and they've been passing that down for 1,000 miles back. And if you think about it, you have 4 grandparents, right? And they each have 4 parents, right? So all of a sudden you have 16 great grandparents, and then they all have 4, and all of a sudden you have 48 great great grandparents.
Right.
And if you keep going, you have millions of relatives, and you come from all their DNA.
Right.
Your DNA is made up of all of theirs. So when it came time to heal from some things, I had only written on my own life's, I was only discovering what happened to me and what I could remember. But that old man, he said, let me explain it to you this way. It's like, you take a brand new baby that you know, your sister's baby or your own baby or whatever. How people describe that newborn is like they can see Uncle Joe's. You got Uncle Joe's cheeks and you got Aunt Martha's lips, you know what I mean, and all this, because if you know who those relatives are, you can see those features in that baby. But when you go back far enough, you don't know who those people are. Great grandparents sometimes, but they still have those features of great great grandparents, great 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 grandparents, and great 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 grandparents. But we just don't know who they are, and so we don't see the features, and so it kind of starts at birth. Well, that's not true. So we're born with this DNA, and it's connected to the brainstem and the brain, right? And so that man told me, you're even carrying stuff from before you were born. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And so, my kind of distant relatives were part of the Trail of Tears. And there was a lot of, even before the journey, the forced march was started, there was a lot of mayhem going along. But then lost a lot of people on that journey to get to Indian Territory, right? And so soon after that, we had a ceremony for everything. We had a ceremony for life, for death, a ceremony for marriage, a ceremony for everything was in ceremony, grieving ceremonies and things like that. Those things got shut down, and for some cultures they just quit getting practiced, because of progress or whatever. And so those ceremonies were to heal you from that, right? And so we're a couple generations, maybe even more, depending on what culture you're from, carrying unhealed DNA from experiences.
Literal
traumas.
Unhealed, baggage, right?
And so that changed everything, because I was trying to actually heal from some things. And so what they meant by that was, like, we store information through words, pictures, and then a feeling attaches to it. So I have happy words, I can think of a happy picture, and a feeling attaches to that. Sad word, sad picture, sad feeling. Traumatic words, traumatic picture, traumatic feelings. And on and on and on, right? And so healing only focuses on that feeling. And so that's why some of our words in that program are, I don't wish to forget the past or shut the door on it, but now I can tell you the words in the picture without having the feeling attached anymore. I was healed from that feeling.
Right.
And so it was like, but I still carried anger and stuff for, I don't know who the they is, right? But what they did to, you know what I mean? People that I was related to.
Right.
They did that, and so there's still this words, pictures, and heavy feeling or angry feeling, or and he said, you even need to heal from that.
Right.
And so I didn't know a whole lot about that history, right? I mean, I knew of it. It was taught in school when I was little, you know what I mean? Just briefly. But he was like, look, this and this happened. These things happened to women. These things, you know what I mean? And as he told that story, I started to get a tear. I'm doing it right now. And after he let me sit in that for about a minute. And then he said, well, how do you feel about that? And I was like, you know, you go through a whole bunch of feelings. Well, I'm sad. Mostly I'm pissed off. And he's like, I don't understand why. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, you weren't there. He was proving to me that I carried it, right? And that blew me away. And so it was like, your ancestors live inside of you through their DNA.
Absolutely.
And, you know, sometimes we all do this, have dreams of some other period of time in history. It's very vivid, you know what I mean? Old barn and plowing with a mule or something like that, you know.
Yeah. Walking on a trail in the Mesa Verde.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah. And it's kind of like a vision almost, or a dream. But it's because the words and the pictures are there. And you acquired them through birth. You know what I mean? And so anyway, only thing I'm trying to get at is that he was like, you even need to heal from those things. And how you get to the last stage of healing is through forgiveness. And I could only kind of really think of my own stuff. And he goes, I'm talking about even healing from the unforgivable. You know what I mean? And I had a couple things in my life. I probably would never forget them 3 people ever. It happened to me when I was a little boy.
Yeah.
And my mind was sitting there going, no way. I'm not forgiving those jerks. You know, I had better words for it. And
Yeah.
he goes, I see you're a little hesitant. Yeah. Well, I haven't really mentioned this to too many people because it's embarrassing for a man to talk about being sexually molested and things like that.
I was there too. Right.
And so, you know, I told him, I said, well, these 3 guys, they did this stuff to me. And he goes, you know, as long as you hang on to that, you have no ability to not pass that to your own kids, that grief. And I was like, wait a minute, what? And he goes, don't you have some kids? And I said, yeah, 3 boys and a daughter. At that time, that's all I had. I got 5 boys now, but you know, I was kind of thinking about my daughter because he was saying you can't have 100% father-daughter relationship when you're carrying this pain. There'll be a block to some of it. And I was like, wow, that hurt. You know, that kind of hurt me. And he was saying that to give me a little window to think about forgiving those guys, right? And do they deserve to be forgiven? Not in my mind. I mean, I just want to take them to the racquetball court for 20 minutes. Give me 20 minutes with each one of them, and then I might forgive them, you know what I mean? But that's kind of just how my system was set up at the time. But and so anyway, it took a little while, but eventually I had to rework in my head what forgiveness was. Like, I didn't have to find them, knock on the door, hey, remember me? I want to forgive you. That's what my mind was saying, and there was no way I could do that. No, we have ceremonies for that. You know what I mean? We have a system in which to do it, and they took me to the ceremony, and I was able to. I mean, it was a process.
Yeah.
Wasn't, you know? It was like grains of sand. I eventually got to that place where they were forgiven, not as human beings, but for their behavior. And I was able to do that, and I got free. I was free from it. And so, and then I feel like I have an obligation. So today, it says we share in a general way, but I know an elder that said, and he's an elder in AA, He says, look, when the opportunity comes along, there's a time for telling the nitty-gritty details because someone needs to hear it.
Right.
And I told that story in front of 5,000 people at an AA conference, and the men lined up, and almost every one of them like, hey, that happened to me too, and I can't talk about it, and blah, blah, blah. And, you know what I mean? I one after another. Because it's a man thing. Yeah. And you might understand from your culture, it's machismo, you know what I mean? We ain't gonna discuss that kind of stuff. And so, by being able to tell it, and I'm emotional about it now, but I mean, I don't carry hate and stuff.
Right.
But
it's a powerful kind of emotion. Thing.
And so, it was like, I don't know how many of those men went on to discuss it and start a healing process with it, but
that's that ripple effect, brother.
Yeah, I mean, that's out of my thing anyway. I was
powerful.
Just supposed to tell it, right? And so that's just one thing, but then they were telling me, hey, you got to go from beyond your own life and do this. And so when we think about an atrocity like the Jewish people, how would they forgive the Nazis, right? But that's how they're going to heal. And so that's a process. And right after I was told this, somewhere in Amish country, I think it was in Ohio, there was a drive-by and the shooter shot like 8 people, killed them dead. And 2 hours later, the news station was there, and I happened to be watching the news. The community had come around, and they were asking them, well, how do you feel about this? And every one of them were like, well, we're here to forgive those perpetrators and lift this up and help our people on their journey. Right. And I was like, you're forgiving them? It was like 2 hours after it happened. And I was like, wow, that culture has that in place. We're not going to carry this into tomorrow. And, isn't that what our program's all about? I say our program, but, the program that we're involved in is about getting this information, forgiving it, healing from it, and then now that you have it, you got to give it away. And that's crazy.
I love the way you touched on the DNA stuff, because the DNA factor is very real. And that's the one thing I love about my healer that I worked with recently. Her name's Charmaine. And she was amazing because she's the first person that I ever worked with that said, we're not just going to work on the things that are going on now. We're going to work on all the things that happened to your ancestors, all the things that have built up in your bloodline, in your DNA from before you even showed up. And it was kind of ironic because the first thing that I thought of, and I said it to her, I was like, well, we've already taken care of the alcoholism, and that would be my biological father, and anybody in that line, and anybody from my mom's line, because that stopped with me. Another thing that stopped was my biological father was a bit of a philanderer, and I stopped that as well. I saw what that did to our family and what it did to my mom, the pain that it caused my mom. And I remember being a little boy and saying, I'm never going to cause that. I'm never going to cause what I saw my mom had to go through, what she had to go through in another woman. I'm not going to. Of course, I came up with other mistakes that I made, but that wasn't one of them, And so there were things that had built up in my DNA that I had already taken care of, but there were other things that were still there, and we worked on those. So I became free of the bondage of all those of that past, and I never realized that was a factor until we started working on it, and then I started realizing that my beingness was totally different when it came to certain situations. I wasn't lashing out anymore. I wasn't isolating anymore. I wasn't beating myself up mercilessly anymore. right? And I found more confidence, and not in an ego way, just in a confident way. Just like I know, I love this saying that I learned a long time ago from the seminars. I know that I know that I know. It's just a knowingness, and it's not an ego thing. It's not a knowing here. I know it here, and I can be it now. I don't have to talk about it. I don't have to showboat it. I don't have to put it on a box, brand it, and sell it. I know it here, and I live it every day.
It's no longer a secret.
Yeah.
That's what I think I got out of it was.
Right. It's all out.
Yeah, we're only as sick as our secrets, and that secret I've never told
And it
anybody.
can't damage you anymore.
And what I didn't know was a secret from
Right.
from
Right.
my ancestors. I
Right.
didn't know that truth. We no way to know all that truth anyway. But
Yeah, and it can't damage
everybody's been affected. There isn't any one culture that hasn't been conquered and put through tragedy and all that kind of stuff. So literally everybody's got a hurt, and whether they can touch it or not, or understand it or not, sometimes we need help with it.
Right.
And, I'm glad to be a part of where we're getting help.
Yeah.
Me and you, and then I'm glad that I was allowed to learn more about who I am, where I come from, and I kind of grew up in it, but that grandpa, he passed away when I was pretty young, and I totally went down a different road, for a long time, and but also that's what brought me back. So when I needed help, it was like, you already know this info, but I kind of didn't, and so that's why I use that word connection, because I went through the motions, little dancing, singing, all that kind of stuff, sweat lodge, followed my grandpa around to sun dances and things like that, but I wasn't connected to it. You know what I mean? And later on, when I was able to get back in it, then a connection began to happen. I think the same thing is for any kind of religion. Is, well, I can go there every Sunday, but I always ask, but are you connected to it? Are you connected to the fundamental spiritual principles of that? And so, it doesn't matter who you are or what culture you're from and what religion you belong to. You can go to it forever, not be connected.
I've never had a chance to really tell you the profound effect you had on my personal journey, Woody. When I did that sweat with you, when we're sitting there one time, and I think we're taking a break, right? The flap was open. I think somebody was getting a new batch of rocks. And to try to Reader's Digest version this, I had seen an Indian holy man to do some healing work on me when I first started this, like in 2009, okay? And I remember something that this holy man said to me while he was doing some work over me. He said, your ancestors have one question for you. Where are your rocks? Where are your rocks? I never understood that, right? Never understood that. And now we fast forward the clock almost 10 years later, and I'm sitting in that sweat lodge with you, and you're explaining to me the significance of those rocks that we were using to steam up the lodge, right? And I know I'm paraphrasing, and I don't want to wreck the meaning that you were telling me, but it was all of the what was it that how did you describe those rocks?
We believe those are our ancestors.
Yeah. Okay. So when you said that to me, I don't want to get emotional over this, but it was I started to shake, like on the inside, because I remembered the holy man and the question that he asked me that day. When you said that, it really shook me in a really great way, because I'm like, I looked up and I went, oh God, that journey took 10 years to get to this very point with this man to tell me this thing right here, right now. Like, and for a brief moment, I started putting together all the things that my God had to do, all the things that he had to put in place to make that amazing moment happen. And I thought, you were just such a big, amazing God. Like, thank you. Like, it was like, okay, I hit point B. Now we got a new point A, but man, this is a really amazing point B. You know, I thought about that. I still think about that. Yeah, I'm really grateful. That was when I immediately went from being just connected with you from the program, and that connection just went to outer space. It went to a totally different level, because I'm like, this is the man that was supposed to teach me that.
For full circle.
Man.
And then they're not my teachings, you know what I mean? They're
right.
Passed down, and I feel obligated to keep.
But all the elders and all of the ones from before all conspired to bring me there and you there at that moment. And that's what I was thinking, is like, all of you guys conspired to put this moment together, and you planned it 10 years ago. That's awesome for this. And then the humbling part came over, which was, and you did all this for me. Like, thank you. Wow. Like, I'm that special. You think enough of me to give me that gift. Like, wow. Thank you.
It kind of answers the question about, I speak for myself. So I used to think of the great God. Why did you punish me for so long? You know, why did you put me through hell? And eventually that transitioned into, no, I sent you to learn, you know, what's on that side of the river, and because there's many more people coming along that are going to need to, you know, pass this information down to.
Right.
And we see it every day, new people coming in. I'm done. I'm lost. I don't know where to begin. And there's plenty of us that go, hey, how's it going? You know what I mean? And let's start. Because we all know now that we can't get someone to a spiritual life by Friday at 3 o'clock. But if you just start this journey with one step,
right,
it will begin to engulf you and be a part of it. And you're still human. You still have free will and the power of choice. You can still say, you know what I mean? And then I kind of don't like, but I like the part in the book where it says we have to apply this to every area of our life. What does that mean? I only had a drug and alcohol problem. You know what I mean?
Right.
And but no, that wasn't really even the problem.
Yeah.
That was my best attempt at
dilemma.
medicating it.
Right.
You know? So to get rid of that, and now I'm sitting with the full real problem, and I don't even know what the heck it is. And even in here and here, like you say. And that's if when I think about it, it's crazy. Going from a young kid and everything that I went through, and this big long journey of trying to destroy myself as best as I could, and other people, the wake and all that you were talking about, and then basically hitting bottom. I mean, that bottom didn't seem like it could go any further, but I can look back now and go, no, I could have made it worse.
We could go a few levels deeper.
Yeah. We can get through bedrock.
I look at this is I wrote a story a while ago based on a conversation I had with my youngest daughter. We had this talk on the way to my mom and dad's house, and it was the first trip that we took to my mom and dad's after my divorce to her mom. And so it was just her and I, as opposed to her sister, my ex, their mom, and so it was kind of a little surreal. And I remember her asking me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and so I was explaining to her this story. I came up with this analogy, and it just came to me in the car, and that's I asked her to look at her hands, and so she looked at her hands, and I said, "What do you see?" And she's like, I see skin, right? She didn't understand. So I was explaining to her fingerprints, that everybody has a unique fingerprint. No fingerprint is identical. It's a miracle of creation, right? Like your fingerprints are not the same from somebody 5,000 years ago. They're individual, and we leave these fingerprints behind on people's hearts, on people's spirits, on the things that we touch, on the places that we've been. And there's some people that refuse to put fingerprints on them anyway. And that absence is still a factor. But we're constantly putting our fingerprints on things. And I was explaining to her, these are unique to you. They're your signature. And the fingerprints that you leave behind are going to be how people remember you. And I was like, these fingerprints are a way that you can live forever. And she kind of gave me this quizzical look, and I'm like, if your fingerprints are full of love, like the fingerprints you're placing on people's hearts and their spirits, if it's about love, it's about care, it's about giving, you're going to live forever, because they're going to talk about you to their kids, and their kids are probably going to talk to their kids about you, because you had an impact on their life, and it was a positive one. It was one of love and forgiveness. So be careful with the fingerprints that you're putting on with people and places and things. Be aware. Know your fingerprints are going to show your motives. Are you a giver? Are you a taker? How do you want to leave this earth? What kind of fingerprints do you want to leave behind? And even at an early age, she kind of got it. So that's kind of like how I've tried to focus on raising my kids. I didn't do all that great of a job with my two oldest daughters, because I was still stuck on stupid with two O's, and by the time my third one came around, I wasn't in that space. I kind of transformed to another level. So I was really kind of grateful I was able to have that moment with her, and she lives it. I know it. Like, I see her and how she lives her life, and I think back to that conversation, and I just think, thank you, God. I know that wasn't me. I know that was my God, coming through me, just to be a vessel to teach my little girl something that I know she can carry on with the rest of her life, and that she knew, she got it. And that's, you've left fingerprints on me. You've left fingerprints on my heart. You've left fingerprints on my spirit, and my girls know about you. So if they ever hear your name, your name's going to be very thought of and well loved in our homes, and that I think that it's something that I carry with me and that I think about on a day-to-day basis. What kind of fingerprints am I leaving around today?
Powerful. Because I think of it as the opposite. It's like all of our little talks we've had, it's like I got some new information from Ernie, you know what I mean? Because of the journeys that you've been on, you told me about a couple of them, and
journeys brought me to people like you, and I learned more. You're a great teacher.
It's that thing about 10 pieces of information. I got a couple, and you got a couple. Together, we don't have all the information still.
That's a lot more than we started.
Yeah, big. And that's kind of minimizing it, because it's probably 1 billion pieces of information, and I got a couple, and you got a couple. And, big community can have quite a bit.
Yeah.
And like those Amish people.
Right.
Right. That together they had most of the information.
Think of the kind of work they had to do collectively to get that out of their DNA.
And for how long? How
Right.
much DNA is involved in that?
Right.
From ancestors. And so, Native people are the same way. And, you can go on and on and on. I'm just not. I mean, I'm not an expert in any of it. But I mean, I've heard powerful people say the whole world's been touched in a hurtful way, one way or another, because even having power is a hurt. You know what I mean? So when one culture conquers another, that affects them too.
Right.
And my little mind says, yeah, but look what happened to that one. You know what I mean? Well, they got a different kind of hurt. It's the hurt of having the power itself to hurt, to throw hurt. So
I had a question for you though. What technically is a kiva?
It's not unlike a lodge, but it's in a cave. And so you go back in this cave, there's a place to sit, there's a fire. Never really seen them throw water on it. It's like a dry, there's a big fire and it burns down and then it gets pretty hot.
Is the purpose to ground spiritually?
Yeah, I mean, you're sitting on the earth and I'm sure they're all, I've been in one so I don't have a lot of experience, but even like lodges, you go across the land, you'll see it slightly different, and they're doing it slightly different, and it's a cultural way. But what does amaze me is that the common thread goes from one coast to the other, and from north to south, and all the way to Peru, and it's like, I mean, there wasn't airplanes and stuff way back then.
Right.
How did they all come up with that's a way to have a ceremony?
Well, the reason why I ask is when my middle daughter was born, her mom and I were trying to come up with a name, and we wanted it to be original, and we were thinking of Riva, a couple other things, and out of the blue, I heard it in my head, and I didn't realize it until my friend, who's Cherokee, came to me and he described what they do in kivas, and he looked at me because my life was just scattered at the time, and he goes, I find it really ironic, Ernie, that you named your daughter Kiva, considering what a kiva is. He goes, that's not a mistake. And that's why my middle daughter's name is Kiva.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I know that to be Hopi, but who knows?
Okay.
I mean, there's in Cherokee, there's the old mound ceremonies, and like I ain't never even been to one of those. I just know of it, but yeah, I mean the dances, everything, celebrating the equinoxes and the solstice, and I mean it was thought of, it has to be done,
right.
And it's not. It's like our Inipi out there. Like the languages in it, I need a ceremony. You know what I mean? It's built out there, and it needs to be alive. You know what I mean? So we're going out there for it,
Right.
to do its thing, and that's kind of how I try to look at it, because I can't be reliant on it without thinking that it's kind of reliant on, you know what I mean, be able to operate. If you just let it set out there, it'll dwindle away.
You're right.
And then of course everything, all the prayers and medicine it takes to have that there and even build it to begin with comes from everywhere. It's like make a bunch of calls. Hey, we're gonna put this together. We're going to gather this and gather that, and and I always get, well, start the fire now and don't let it go out till you're done. Even though it might take 4 days. It's like, so you learn stuff along the ways. There's no university course to take on culture.
Right.
It's a lifetime, and I know a lot of people, and this ain't a put down, that they don't know their own culture, no matter what it is, white, red, yellow, black, or white, and so that's a missing link that can harm people. You know what I mean? It's like you don't know who you are, right? In the cycle of life, it goes from baby, youth to adult to elder. Right. And then there's 8 stages of life that one must go through in order to be whole, right? And so the first one is trust. The second one is autonomy. The next one is initiative. The next one is accomplishment. And the 5th one is identity, right? There's 2 more after that, generativity and integrity. But that all happens pretty close to how you grow up from baby. Wow. You know, as a baby, you develop trust. You're wrapped in that blanket, or you're put in a cradle board, or you're put in a cradle bed thing, and you're fed by being held, and all that kind of stuff creates a trust. So that baby gets that. But then when they hit their 2s, the stage of autonomy, they're like, no. You need 4 or 5 people try to corral that little thing. You know what I mean? And I think it's funny. My elder, he's everyone's elder, but he used to say, the very first words every child figures out is the word no. That's the first sign of autonomy, right? And so then they come to the sense of the stage of initiative, and that's where they want to like pour their own milk, and I can start the washer. Let me pour the soap in it, and
I'll walk to school by myself.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and you go outside, and if you leave your car door open, which most of us do, they're behind the wheel. And if the key was there, they probably would have been gone. You know what I mean? Right. And things like that. So they go through that stage, you know, and then a little bit older, young teens go through the stage of accomplishment. And so they say there's no blueprint for raising kids.
Sounds like one to me.
It's not true. There is a blueprint for raising kids. So it's like everything a child is doing, early teens or whatever, is a learning. And so what feeds their spirit is a sense of accomplishment. So it don't matter what they do. Wow, that looks nice. I really like what you wrote. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so this just happened the other day. But somebody asked my son, my youngest son, he's 14, how are your grades looking? You know what I mean? What's the worst grade you got? And I was sitting there going, wow. You know, as I learned a long time ago, no, we ain't going to look at the worst grade. What's the best grade you got? Well, I got an A+ in this. Right. Awesome. You know what I mean? And if you give them the sense of accomplishment, they'll look at that D or F themselves and go, you know what? I'm going to get that better. Right? And they'll make their own effort to do it. But if you degrade by going, okay, well, F, what the heck is this? Let's take away your phone and all this kind of stuff. And that gives them a different spirit, right? Right. But in the late teens is where them 3 questions come up. Who am I? Why am I? And where am I going? And that's a sense of identity. Now, as I was a kid, people were hitchhiking across the country, and they had their frisbees and backpacks and Jesus sandals, I used to call them. And you know, the motto was peace, love, and peace, love, dope. And sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right. And all that kind of stuff. And
I remember that one.
You know, basically, it was a movement, and what they would say is, "I'm going to find myself." Well, natural stage to be doing that, right? The thing about this is, and we got to wrap it up a little bit, but if you don't get those things in a healthy way, you will get them in an unhealthy way. Wow. Because it's coming no matter what. So you can get unhealthy trust, unhealthy autonomy, unhealthy initiative, unhealthy accomplishment, unhealthy identity, and go into adulthood, and you won't have any generativity or no integrity.
Wow.
You know, and I don't believe it's true that you can have integrity with out of balance stuff. And so that's another thing this program does, is it rebuilds that no matter where you're at. I can rebuild and reset trust, autonomy, initiative, accomplishment, identity. And those three questions come up. Who am I? Why am I? And where am I going? And my elder taught me that. And at the precise moment that I needed that to happen.
Wow.
And so there was an acceptance about who am I? Who are my grandparents? Who are my great-grandparents? So on and so forth, which gives me an idea of who I am. And some people don't know that information. So
Right.
they struggle. But still, I can develop who am I right now. It can be done. I know that for a fact. But yeah, I know. We could sit here all night. I could probably make 6 shows out of this. But yeah, I hope to have you back on.
I'd love
and,
to. Thank you for having me just now.
Be some more growth.
been
No,
an honor.
I'm
It's been an
I'm
honor.
excited that you agreed to come on, and without knowing
Well,
much about
thank
this,
you for
but
having me, Woody. I appreciate it.
I really, this is a vision to do this, you know, and
I'm
I
on
don't know
board.
why that man gave me that name when I was little, Guna Uchu Uvia, and you know, and to find out just not too long ago, 20 years ago or so, that the deeper meaning of that was messenger of many camps.
Wow.
And now health-wise, I can't really do what I used to do, which is I moved all over this country,
Right.
setting this kind of spiritual circles up, and I just can't physically do it no more, and put myself at kind of high risk, and my legs don't get any blood anymore.
Oh.
And so I've been racking my brain for a long time, and 2 things come up. You know, one was I had a vision about having a company called 10 Companies Inc., right? So we just did that. We created 10 Companies Inc. And then, you know, sort of the other vision that came later on was I need to be a messenger of
Many camps.
help, you know. And I didn't put it that way, but when I first got this was so powerful to me that it was like, and that guy who was helping me said, the only thing that I ask of you is that you turn around and give it away. And I took that to freaking heart. It was like, okay, if that's all I owe, I'm going to pay it. I didn't know that like 32 years later, I'd still be going, I owe it, but I do. You know what I mean? And we all do. And I know
Right.
that you understand that. So you know, maybe you can make a comment and thank Ernie for coming on the show, and he'll be back. I know where he's at, and I got his number. But yeah, you know, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. 1,000 Miles with Woody Blaine, and I'm going to keep going on. I think I said this earlier, but if you want to be on the show by Zoom or however that works out for us, you know, send me a message, and we'll put you on the list and start working on it. Love to have you. Need some more wisdom. So, you know, all that good stuff they say on podcasts. Subscribe, hit the buttons, and leave a reply. And if you can help us out with the show, it needs a lot of help just to continue going. You know, please consider that too. Anyway, till next time, peace, and to all my relations.
The sky's looking dark and the clouds look heavy. Might be wiser if I hopped in the Chevy. But I have a lot to think about. even if I get rained out. The sky's looking dark and the clouds look heavy. Might be wiser if I hopped in my Chevy. But I have a lot to think about. I'm gonna take a walk even if I get rained out. I'm moving on, walking on. So much going on I can't ignore. Just let that rain pour. Talk to my maker as I trek along. Hum with the birds as they sing their songs, and I'll keep walking on as the rain pours on. I'm moving on, I'm walking on. Close the world out for a moment of time, just a quick breath to clear my mind. Wind starts blowing and the rain's much harder. Leaves flying everywhere, the sky's much darker, and I'll keep walking on, walking on. Finds a piece of mind with every step I take. Humming with the birds till my soul is sick. Look to the sky as the rain pours down. As it hits my face, I can hear the silent sounds. I'm moving on, walking on, walking on. In a new cycle and the world's gone mad. Let's teach others the beauty of the land. My heart will be right as we come full circle. I'll give thanks for the miracles. North, south, east and west, I feel so blessed. I'm moving on, walking on. I'll keep walking when I'm overwhelmed. Find my harmony in a different realm. All the while, know the answers lie within. I'm moving on, I'm walking on, I'm walking on. The sky looks dark and the clouds look heavy. Might be wiser if I hopped in the Chevy. But I have a lot to think about. I'm gonna take a walk even if I get rained out. I hope